Here's a system that makes vermicomposting or worm composting as easy as 1. Open the drawer, put the scraps in, let the worms eat. 2. Shut the drawer. 3. Out comes worm tea. Easy as can be. Stay tuned to find out how this thing, the worm tap, works in this video coming up. If you've watched my channel in the past, you'll know one thing. I'm not a huge fan of vermicomposting, at least the way that you do home-scale vermicomposting. I love the idea of using worms to recycle your kitchen waste, but I hate how awkward it is, how heavy it can be, how messy it can be, how difficult it can be to sort the castings from the worms at the end of the process on a home scale. On an industrial scale, it's really easy. On a home scale, it's just kind of awkward. Well, this tool, the worm tap, is one way to make worm composting at home really easy for most people. It's as easy as open a drawer, put the scraps in, let the worms eat, and out comes worm tea that you can use in your garden at the end of the day. It's super simple. After last week's video showing Benny Thompson, the inventor of the worm tap, I wanted to take some time to go through this tool, this invention, bit by bit to really show you how it works, to open it up, and I want to give you my honest thoughts on this as a tool for the homeowner or the homesteader. I'm not getting paid to make this video. This isn't a promotional video. This is just me talking about something that I really love, and I want to see more of these out there. This is a unit that I've used in the past. Right now it's not active for demonstration purposes, and so I can give you an inside look at how this is actually working. But this is what it would be. I'm about 6 feet tall. It's up to my shoulder, so it's probably 5.5 feet tall. It's got about a 2-foot depth on it, and it's about 1 foot wide. And the main component of this really is the drawer system. This is where all the scraps and worms are going to go. And you'll see these are stainless steel bins, really high quality. In the back of each bin, there are holes drilled, and that's where water is going to drain out to the next level. So it'll be inside each of these drawers that you'll put some compost initially with your red wiggler worms, and then you start adding scraps to the system. Notice in the top one, the holes are in the back. If we go down to the next tier, everything is the exact same except the holes are in the front. So what you get in this system is one where water comes in at the top and it zigzags its way down through the layers like this. So it's really important to level your system so when it's zigzagging, that flow is controlled and natural and gravity driven and not exacerbated by an excessive slope forward, backward, or left to right. And there's nice bolt feet on the bottom that are adjustable to help you get this really level. What I would suggest when using this is you just find a pattern. I feed the top on Monday, I feed the next drawer on Tuesday, and work your way down the system, trying to keep an even distribution of load throughout the system. One thing people have said is, well, what happens when this gets to capacity? Well, worm populations, like any other species, will self-regulate, so you'll never get too many worms. If they run out of food, if they run out of room, they just won't reproduce. If you eventually get too much compost or worm castings in here, well, you just remove some and put it in the garden, put it in a compost pile, use it in a different way. You do have to do some maintenance on it, but it's pretty easy. When you think about normal vermicomposting, you're feeding into a bin system or a stacking system, and then you're typically having to move those layers around. There's no moving in this. This drawer is always going to be number 1 at the top. This drawer is always going to be number 2, number 3, number 4. The only moving you're ever doing is sliding, and it's so easy. Look at this. Now that the 5 drawers are out, we can start to get a look at what's going on inside. At the very bottom, there's a reservoir, and that reservoir contains a few things. A float valve to prevent the reservoir from overflowing, an aerator to aerate the tea at the bottom so it doesn't go anaerobic. It's not just a solution sitting down there, it's an aerated solution. And there's a pump. And that pump connects to a PVC pipe that runs all the way up to the top. It comes up in the back, and then it comes across the top right here towards the front is where it's going to drip down into the tray that would be on top. And if we remember, the tray on top was one that had holes in the back. So the water that comes out of that pipe feeding this is going to be dripping here, and then that water will naturally make its way back this way and then go into these holes and drip down the next layer and kind of just zigzag its way down slowly over time. One handy feature Benny has also added to the system, which is right here, is an outport. So if you wanted to tie this into a hydroponic system, or you wanted to tie this into your irrigation system, you could tap into that right there. And if we shut it, it stays closed looped within the worm tap itself. So here I removed the front panels at the bottom so you can get a good look of what's going on inside here. This is the bottom reservoir. It's a 6-gallon stainless steel reservoir with a tap on the front. When it goes time to get your worm tea out, it's easy. You just twist the ball valve and out comes the tea. Inside here, you have the aerator, right here, an air stone, which is hooked up to an air pump at the back. You have your float valve, which is going to control the water going into the tank to make sure it doesn't overflow. And then beneath it is where you have a water filter, which is tied to this line. This is your incoming water line right here. There's an inline water filter tied to that, and there is a timer at the bottom underneath here, which controls how often this circulates, meaning how often is the pump going to go from here and pump the water up to the top. Its default setting is to do that twice a day at 11:50 a.m. and 11:50 p.m., where it takes the water and circulates it from here to here. As the water zigzags down, that's where it's picking up all the mineral-rich leachate along the way, and it drains into this tank where, again, it's aerated, so it's not sitting there going stagnant or anaerobic. One potential disadvantage to this system is it needs to be set up near a water source. Not the best thing for some people, not the easiest thing for some people. Considering this has to be really stored where it gets environmental protection, meaning you don't want it to freeze, you don't want it to get too hot, so not too hot, not too cold. That might mean it's on the side of a building like I have here. This is on the north side of my house where it's pretty shaded all year round, or it has to be in a garage. I just happen to have a host bib right here, which makes it easy. A lot of people won't have that, so you'd have to potentially either run a hose to it. I don't love the idea of that, or you'd have to fill it manually, which would mean, really the way it's designed now, pouring water into one of the drawers. It's kind of awkward. I think a port hole in the side with like a funnel on it where you could manually add water to the tank would be a nice feature to see somewhere along the line. But this is your input line right here, this white line, and it's simple. It's just hose thread, hook it up, and then turn the water on. One thing I don't like typically is leaving water pressurized through hoses, because if you go away and this bursts or it leaks, water is just running everywhere. So that's another potential downfall of this system, although a minor one. Keep in mind I'm splitting hairs here, but you do have to keep this pressurized at all times. Now that we've turned it on, we can see the water coming in, and the system will continue to fill until that white float valve gets triggered. Now the float valve is tripped, water is no longer coming into the tank, so it won't overflow. The next step would be to plug it in. Now here's another potential negative to this system. It does require power. You have to power the system because there's a pump and there's an aerator in there. Now if you're savvy, you could rig it up to a battery system, put a solar panel on it, and run it that way. But for most people, it is going to require an extension cord. Not the end of the world, but just another thing that might limit where you put it. Once we plug it in, noise clicks on. That's the aerator, and that's actually the pump going off. Now with it plugged in, we have the aeration system going. This is what's making it a tea, not just a leachate. This air stone is connected to that air pump back there, so it's constantly adding oxygen into the water to allow aerobic conditions versus a stagnant anaerobic condition. And that's one thing a lot of people were worried about. How does it not go anaerobic? That's how it doesn't go anaerobic. Now normally the pump would be set up on a timer, but I'm going to bypass that timer just to get things pumping. And what we'll see, there is water coming out the top from the bottom reservoir. And if we put the drawer in, you'll see water now coming out the very back of the system. And that's exactly how it would zigzag its way through the system, coming out the back of one into the front of the drawer below. To get the worm tap up and running, it's pretty simple. We've filled the basin with water. That's as simple as connecting the hose to the faucet. I plugged it in, and then I went into every bin. I added some compost, worm compost that I had from a non-worm tap style bin, just a traditional bin, along with worms into each of the drawers, the solid part of the drawer, and then I put some food scraps into each drawer, just enough to really get it started. One thing you'll notice when you do that, initially, you're gonna get a lot of that compost washing away. There's just not enough mass in there, but over time, a lot of that mass will grow as you add more food scraps to it, and you'll start to get levels building up in each of the drawers. Since I just loaded it today, I'm not gonna go in and try and pull worm tea from this anytime soon. I'm probably gonna let it sit for at least 2 weeks. Why 2 weeks? Really, there's no reason for that, other than I think the system needs time to reach some sort of stasis, where the bacteria, which weren't in a more aquatic system, which this is, get some time to adjust and stabilize. The worms need to get used to living in this environment. All the bacteria need to get used to living in this environment. And until that system really self-regulates itself, I don't want to be pulling nutrients out of the system. I don't want to be pulling bacteria out of the system and keep adding fresh water and diluting those things out. I want a population to build up, let it get thriving, and then after about 2 weeks, I will start pulling things out of the system. Some questions I have around the worm tap at this point. One is, how can it handle cold weather? It's early January here in Southern California, and while things don't get that cold, we will likely have frost sometime in January or February. Temperatures at night now get to about 39 degrees. They could go about 10 degrees colder at the coldest point of the year. How is this system going to handle that? I'm not quite sure. Stay tuned to find out more on that. The other big question I have isn't around the worm tap itself, it's more around worm tea and compost tea. Is it actually beneficial? I'm not so sure. And I think a lot of soil people are going to say, oh, it is beneficial, it is beneficial. And I would say, where are the studies? Show me side-by-side comparisons that show that worm tea and compost tea being added to a system is actually beneficial. Meaning those plants do better with those things added than if you didn't add a tea. I've had a lot of people who have a lot of growing experience express a lot of skepticism around compost tea and worm tea. I think that's a healthy skepticism. You should be asking those questions. So is this actually worth it? I don't know. It definitely is a way to recycle food waste. It definitely is a way to kind of close the loop. It's fun. It's a way for kids to learn about this type of thing. It's a way for people to get more involved. All those things are beneficial. If it makes you happy, if it's a hobby, great. That's more reason to do it. But when it comes time to go to the soil, is that part actually worth it? I'm not so sure, because I don't know what's in that tea. How much nutrient value is actually there? Is the bacteria that goes from the tea into the soil actually surviving in the soil and helping the plants? Those are big questions and maybe things I'll study in the future. But I do have some skepticism around tea, but I love the system as a way just to participate in closing the loop and getting people involved in a way that's super easy with a drawer-based open drawer system. One other thing I would put out there if you're using a system like this is I wouldn't be putting the tea on plants you are going to be eating in the near future. Salad greens, tomatoes, fruits, anything like that. You don't know what's in that tea. There could be potentially salmonella and harmful bacteria in the tea itself. Without knowing 100% sure that that tea is clean of any harmful bacteria, I wouldn't be putting it on food that you're going to be putting in your body. As a soil drench, fine. If it's going to go on root crops, I wouldn't put it on root crops near when you're going to harvest them. You don't know what's there. and you want to be careful, you want to be safe, so be cautious about just putting this tea over salad greens and stuff that you're going to eat in the near future. As I said a few times, I love the system as a way that people can participate in home-scale composting in a really simple, low-effort way. But there are some issues that I have with the worm bin, so I'm going to get nitpicky and critique this and tell you some of the things I don't like about the system. And I am nitpicking and micromanaging here. None of these are death blows, but there are some things that I wish could be better. Number one, you do have to be near a plug. You do have to be near a faucet. Not a death blow for a system like this, but potentially an inconvenience for people. It's big, it's bulky, it's heavy, it's tough to move around. So if you're smaller, trying to get it into place can be tough. It's like moving a refrigerator around. Number three would be, I wish it was easier to add water from the outside without having it connected to a hose. So if you didn't have a hose here, it'd be nice if there was a little port on the outside that you could just put a hose up to or put a watering can up to add more water into the system if you didn't want to leave it connected all the time. Another thing that's a little bit of a nuance and kind of a pain, might be a bigger issue for some people than others depending on where you're storing this, is when you pull out some of these drawers, the drawers that have holes in the front, when you open it to add scraps in, you're getting a lot of liquid dripping down onto the floor. This is on my deck. I don't really mind if it goes on there, but I do wash it off every time. It's just kind of one of those things, it's a pain to do. So these drawers that have the holes in the front, if you're going to be pulling those out a lot and you have a floor below that is something you care about, you might want to put a rubber mat below this to catch some of the drippings and prevent stains going on the floor. So those are the issues that I have with the system. I'm just trying to be honest and transparent. They are minor, but they may affect other people in the use of the worm tap in certain situations, more so in some situations than in others, but overall it is a great system. One other thing you need to think about if you're using the worm tap is the product that really comes out of here is tea and compost feedstock, because eventually these bins are going to fill up and you're going to need to empty those out. You can just put that into the compost pile or in the garden, the sludge, and then start again at a lower point. I would say that's a byproduct, but not really a beneficial one. It's just kind of more of a maintenance byproduct that you're going to have to do. The main product that comes out of this is the tea, which, as I spoke about before, may or may not be beneficial for the soil. In traditional vermicomposting, the one thing that you get out of that system, in addition to leachate if you're collecting it, are the castings. They are physical things, solids, that can actually change the tilth of the soil in addition to adding nutrient value to the soil. This system, you're not getting that. You're getting a liquid product out, not a solid product out. So if you're looking to change tilth, you want to go a more traditional vermicompost system. If you're looking to have composting, or if you're looking to have castings to add to a potting mix, this isn't going to be the system for you. So you really need to look at what you're trying to do and what end product you're trying to get out of a vermicomposting system, and then buy the appropriate equipment to get that. If you want a solid product, a soil amendment that has nutrient value, then you're going to have to go a different route. If you're okay using the tea and you like using the tea and you get great results, this is the answer for you, because this is way easier than the solid route. It's a different product and it's going to give you different results in the soil, but definitely easier when you compare the two. Right now, this worm tap is up and running. If you want to learn more about the worm tap and its inventor, Benny Thompson, be sure to check out the last video that I did with Benny. I've linked to that below. You can also check out his Dark Nectar Cooperative, which is a company that actually sells the worm tap. Linked to that below. And now that this is up and running, I'll be doing future videos following up on the worm tap, just to let you know how it's progressing. I may look at the actual fluid in here and get it analyzed. What type of nutrient value is in that fluid, and how potentially beneficial is that for the soil. If you have questions about this that I didn't cover in this video or the previous video, let me know and I'll try and make another video to answer more of those questions. Have fun vermicomposting however you're doing it. Find an easy way to do it. The worm tap's one easy way to do it. Thanks for watching. Until next time, be nice, be thankful, and do the work.